Hiya, pal.
Hello everyone, this is Agent 992 and today we're back for the brand new video. And today's video arrives with a sensational amount of excitement, troops. Real excitement, but also an equal level of terror and fear as it may all come crumbling down, and I might be sitting here the exact same way I sat here 3 years ago and we're disappointed about no getting this man, as we're here once again to talk about the possibility of maybe bringing in Kevin Muscat. And spoiler alert, for the next 15, possibly 20 minutes, I'd give anything for this man to be the next manager of this football club. Why, you may ask yourself? Well, we'll find out very, very shortly, as we are here for part 3 of the Managerial Search series, and hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, it's more Return of the King rather than Rise of the Skywalker, if you catch my old drift. As we are here to talk about none other than a Season 1 fan favourite, and the guy we all 3 years ago hoped and prayed would be the next Rangers manager. Those in charge of the club had different ideas. We saw where that led us, but now we are back circling the old wagons and once again looking at the prospect of bringing Big Kev up the road. But just in case you missed that video a couple of years, or you can't remember what we spoke about, or genuinely want an update on what the man's been up to since we chose Clement over him, where did he go, what did he win? Well, we'll talk about it right here on the old channel as we go ahead and dive into the old managerial profile. Now, in terms of a player profile, he's of course very familiar to a lot of Rangers fans, as he was here and he played 22 games for the football club during the 2002/3 season. You know, this one, ladies and gentlemen, that was the season, and he did play his part, especially defensively, and helping a lot of clean sheets, which ended up being very, very important, as that was the season it went down to the very last day, and it went down to goal difference, where someone was sat there and threw Dunfermline under the bus because they weren't very, very happy. It was that season he played, and for the most part, Kevin Muscat behaved himself during the treble winning season. I say that as if he wasn't selected for an old firm because the manager was terrified he would break somebody in half. After all, we are here talking about a guy who was known as the most hated man, as he was called that, from a former Birmingham footballer, and as a player he certainly got a reputation for the nasty side of the game, and he certainly picked up enough red cards to back all that up. However, what's really, really strange and what's very, very unusual is his characteristics in terms of what he was as a player didn't follow him into management, because you might be hearing that, you might remember, you might have seen a compilation of this man's red cards, and I'll tell you something, he probably deserved every single one of them, and that might build you up with an image in your brain of what his teams will look at, maybe defensively sound, where they go about throwing their bodies on the line and they take absolutely nonsense. It's right there. It would be the easiest story to tell in the world, but it would be a story that wouldn't be true, because somehow, some way, this man's managerial career has went the exact opposite, and we're here talking about a manager who goes ahead and plays a style of football that is absolutely beautiful, rampant and attacking to watch. Everything he was as a player has almost been flipped, as we are here to talk about one of the most attack-minded managers we've ever discussed right here on this channel. And I don't think anybody that's a regular viewer of this channel needs me to sit here and tell you that I really, really want to see that back in a Rangers team, as this style of play, the way he goes about his business and the success he's had in nearly every single team he's managed in terms of putting the ball into the back, and it really strikes fear. His style of play, his philosophy isn't about playing the pretty game or having 90% of the ball and outpassing another team by double. His entire philosophy and what he sets his team out today is get the ball forward, and score goals. No matter if it's 2, 3, 4, 5, he is demanding more and more for his team, and it's never over, and he's never satisfied. It's about getting the ball forward. It's about having shots for range. It's about getting midfield runners in and amongst the box. And again, if you are a team that thrives on it, he is happily getting the ball out in that wide area, packing the box and having that ball raining down time and time again, asking questions constantly of the defenders and not allowing them to get a breather. He almost suffocates the life at the opposition, not allowing them to breathe at any point. He wants the ball forward, whether it's 1-2 up there, if it's a punt up the park, if it's getting out wide, then chucking in. That is the instinct this man's got, and this is the way that every single one of his teams is set out to play. Now, people might be starting to put the pieces together. You're talking about a relentless style, an attacking style, a style that never stops, dare I say. And a lot of people might be saying, that sounds pretty damn familiar. It sounds the exact way we spoke about Celtic under Ange Postecoglou, which again, for me, is the best I've seen Celtic play as a collective. I know Rodgers wins everything in sight these days and everything like that, and I know a lot of people absolutely love him, but when I actually glanced over at the Celtic team, I was like, Jesus, look at that. It was under Ange Postecoglou, and some people will take that as a negative. Some people will look at that with a gritty teeth and say, oh, I didn't want any of that. Or you'll have people, a Celtic fan, saying, you're copying Celtic. But ladies and gentlemen, I could not care less. You know what I mean? Because football's always been a copycat game, and what's been proven to succeed and been proven to work has been replicated and then evolved and then tweaked and then changed. And you might sit here and say we're trying to be Ange Postecoglou, but that's almost a disservice, because Ange Postecoglou and Kevin Muscat worked together. They put these teams together, and over Kevin Muscat's career and Ange's, they were side by side, turning and fine tuning their team. So there's no getting away from the fact that our style would be similar to that one. But again, what we're talking about, a style of football that ran over Scottish football, that dominated and scored goals for fun and never gave teams that play part the bus time to breathe or take points off them. That's what we've got to be offended about trying to replicate in this league, playing attacking football that scores a lot of goals. Oh yeah, lock us up, ladies and gentlemen. I hate that. It's not a bad thing, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, I think it's been negligent that we've seen how successful that style of football was years and years ago, and we've never once tried to replicate that style despite the success and despite how we saw it working. But years and years and years later, it seemingly is something we're glancing at and saying, I want a wee bit of that. And again, that has been Kevin Muscat's blueprint every single club he's managed, barring one little problem which we will speak about later on in today's video. So in terms of the style of play, again, it's a massive tick for me. I can't wait if he does come up the road to see what Rangers looks like in a couple months time, and the type of performances and hopefully results we start getting on the back of that. But enough talking about the playstyle for me. That's a plus point. Let's move away and get to the old success then, shall we? That's another box that needs to be ticked, because one of the things we have been screaming right here, not only in the comments section but in the stands, is we want to see a manager in that dugout that's actually won something. And I said during the open statement thing from the owners of this football club, I'm sick to death watching guys come in at the dugout that's never won nothing, try to teach players that's never won nothing on how to win something when they've no done it. You know what I mean? It's just never made sense, and it's never ever worked out, and it's made me feel very ill. Well, ladies and gentlemen, has Kevin Muscat won things as a manager? Yeah, he has. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Muscat is the most successful manager me and thee has ever spoken about right here on this channel. If you look at every candidate, no matter the year, over the years on this channel, Kevin beats every one of them with how many trophies he's actually picked up. And I think that's what we're going to go ahead and talk about next, because he started his career over in Melbourne because he was a player. He transitioned from a player to then obviously a manager, and he eventually replicated the success he had as the player, becoming the first player in Australian football's history to win the league and then manage his club to go ahead and win the exact same league in 2014/15. That was an incredible achievement, again gone in the history books, especially transitioning from a player to then managing the same club. We know how difficult that can be. We've glanced at that and over other clubs at different leagues and different levels. It very rarely works out that way, but he reached the mountaintop, but he didn't just do it once, which was important to him to go ahead today, as Melbourne once again fought against the odds and fought their way back up to 2017/18 to go ahead and drop a dirty double as they won the league again. And then what followed was eventually another cup win in 2020, and that was him, ladies and gentlemen. He sat back and glanced and looked at how well he'd done and how much he maybe overachieved compared to what he had and what else was getting on in the rest rest of the league. And after spending so many years there, both as a manager and as a player, after nearly 15 years, he wanted a new challenge. He wanted a fresh opportunity, and he made the decision to leave and go elsewhere. And when he made that decision to leave and try a crack at Europe, he left as being the longest ever serving at Melbourne, in which he had managed 202 games, winning 96, drawing 45 and losing 61. Again, it's not the greatest eye-watering stats you'll ever see or anything like that, but again, context needs to be given about the team that he was doing and what he actually achieved and won there. It's an incredible, incredible job. His next one, however, really wasn't. Now, if you remember 3 years ago, I said it was maybe one of the weirdest things and one of the weirdest cases I've ever looked into. Well, 3 years on from that period, it's still possibly in the top 5 weirdest things I've ever had to really investigate or dive into and read plenty of articles on, because when he'd left and made the decision to move from Melbourne to go over to Belgium, he didn't have all his badges, so he had to first go to be the technical director whilst he worked on that before eventually being given the manager position nearly a year later. And when he was finally given the opportunity to manage the team and run the team, he was sacked after just 14 games. Which on paper sounds like he's giving Russell Martin a run for his money, which is very, very scary. But honestly, I said this years ago and I'll say it now, there is so much he said, she said stuff regarding everything that was happening at that football club. Was he undermined? Was he let down? Players were getting sold for underneath him. He was saying, nah, didn't sell him. He was waking up the next day, then he was gone. His team and his blueprint was ripped up completely. And that's the way his season sort of unfolded for how much he went ahead and done. And it just wasn't a fit. There was arguments, there was fracturing in relationships. It was clear it wasn't going to work out, and the separation was made after just 14 games. And again, you want to look at it as bluntly as harshly. He went over to Europe and failed in a pretty big way, but again, there is some context that needs to be given to that as well. And trust me, there's enough articles and rabbit holes to dive into regarding the mess around that time. But for me, it was just the wrong club at the wrong time, and obviously a wrong career move. Thankfully, he didn't have to wait too long for his next job as he went over to Japanese football, once again linking up with Ange Postecoglou and once again taking over the reins as Ange went ahead and moved on to Celtic. It was then all on Kevin, and was he going to sink or was he going to swim after having that knock in European football? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's fair to say he Michael Phelps it. Now, you might be wondering why I flapped my wings there when talking about swimming. I guess you can go ahead and call that the butterfly, ladies and gentlemen. But moving on from there, again, his time in Japanese football was again another successful one, as he was in charge for 116 games. He won 77, he drew 20, and he lost just 19, which is a better little runaway, absolutely. And it's even better to say he once again won the league. He once again won some cups, ladies and gentlemen, and once again was dominant, playing his attacking style of football. What's even more impressive about this run and this period, however, is if you look in to Yokohama and see how they were rated in terms of their wage budget and where they are in terms of net spend, they were around 9th in the table in terms of their budget, and yet they still overachieved under Kevin Muscat, and yet still went ahead and played that way as they were built to go forward, and it just made them win. But again, just like the last time, ladies and gentlemen, when he fell, he took a team as far as he possibly could, and he had won everything that he could win. That itch again, that itch that needed to be scratched in terms of European football was right there for him, and he thought he had it. And that's when we come in, because it was exactly this time a couple years ago we started to flirt with old Kev and interview Kev and bring him down to the final two between him and Phil Clement. Now again, we all know how that ended up turning out, but Kevin had been sort of burnt out by that, as he really felt like he would be able to take Rangers. He was really invested in taking Rangers to where he wanted to go, and after that what then came was an opportunity to go to China and play and manage Shanghai Port, where again, to sit here and say this man was successful is a genuine understatement, as he's been absolutely ridiculous over there, winning everything in sight. as he's won the cups, he won the league. And again, so far when I'm currently recording today's video, he is once again at the tippity top of that league with 4 league games to go, 2 points clear, looking like he's going to go ahead and make it a dirty double, winning everything once again. But it's important to remember what we just said right there, and this is when it becomes a little bit interesting, because he is so deep into the season, because he is so close again to making it there and winning another title, another league. It does leave this potential managerial appointment sort of in limbo, because does he go ahead and leave that team and hopefully see them go ahead from a distance to carry over the work that he's put in and lift the trophy with just 4 games to go, or does he stay earlier and the likes of Neil McCann comes in and manages us for a couple weeks until the job that he set out today is done? And I think this might be one of the very few negatives regarding Kevin Muscat, and one of the real frustrations, because I can see it for either way. Some people were saying, well, if he's wanting to be the Rangers manager, he's going to take the job now. It's now or never. We're not second best to anybody, and I understand that, whilst others will sit and look and say he's set out there to do it just because we've now came back and knocked at the door after we shut it on him the last time. He's supposed to throw away all the years work he's put in to lift another trophy and abandon the team that he's went ahead and led to this point when they need him just to get over the end. It's all about perspective again, as often these videos actually are, but I'll tell you where I sit, ladies and gentlemen, where I can understand and appreciate him maybe wanting to stay there and show loyalty to the players and see them over the line to deliver yet another title. Again, I'm a Rangers fan, ladies and gentlemen, and if that goes out to the final day, if he could possibly miss up to 7-8 games, you're talking about a semi-final versus Celtic in there. You could wrap up quicker, you could be up the road quicker, but we're really in a point that we want to sit and roll the dice and wait for that to end. In a perfect world, in a perfect scenario, he's in the door immediately. But again, if this one does end up becoming right and does end up going to where we want it to go, there is a real possibility we might bring him in, but it might not be right away. But again, to finish up his career journey and the success that he's had as a manager, not only is he closing in on another title, you look at it, he's managed 26 games, ladies and gentlemen. They've scored 63 goals during that period. And again, that just backs up that this man plays the most ridiculous, relentless attacking football you will ever see. And again, I would love to see Ibrox. Now, the rough structure of a Kevin Muscat team is probably something people are very, very interested in. It is a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, whatever you want to say. Now, he has occasionally played a 5-3-2 and a 4-4-2 and all that fancy stuff out there, but his teams are all built, no matter what he's selected or what shape they go for, they're built, again, to get the ball as quickly forward. It's about isolating wingers. This is a winger's dream right here. This is the manager you want. See the likes of Gazma when he had the highest dribbling percentage in terms of taking men on in the Championship last year for a struggling Sheffield Wednesday. Said, if you're a dribbler of anything, you have finally got a manager that's going to feed you the ball and get you in 1v1 scenarios, because you can't get doubled up because you've got a midfield runner in behind, you've got a striker pulling out there. That is a winger's dream to play in this type of style, and I'm expecting them to explode. And in fact, I'm even expecting the likes of Mikey Moore to have very good games and be very, very excited. For the likes of Finlay Curtis, who's our type of guy, this is what you want to see. This is the guy we want developing these players, as they'll put them in positions to really attack. And if anybody can put Ant-Man back together again and fix that broken void of confidence, it'll be in this style, as everything should fit if it does come up the road. But again, everything on paper and everything should do this and everything should do that doesn't necessarily mean it will ever translate. Even if it comes up the road, it can go wrong, it can fail, it can fall out with folk, because another thing we need to talk about is what happened at Belgium in the falling out and the souring of the relationship, and they taking the nonsense and speaking out when he felt he wasn't being given the best opportunity or best pot. Well, we know what's running our football club. We know who's in and around that building. Is that a possible recipe for a disaster? Absolutely, but I'll tell you something right now. I like the fact that there is that edge to Kevin Muscat, and he's no a yes man. My biggest fear, no matter what happens during this managerial search series, my biggest fear is the next permanent manager of this football club is a yes man, and he just sits back and lets the inmates continue to run the asylum unchecked. For me, if we bring in a character like Muscat, where again it can blow up and fall apart the way it did in Belgium, is certainly one avenue, but the fact he will hold them accountable and he'll no sit in press conferences and lie to our faces, he'll hold people responsible, for me is what I want in the dugout at Rangers and what I want in terms of a manager or a head coach. Now, it is worth noting he has actually been listed as a head coach during his time over in China, and he has been working with a sporting director and that as well, so he's not new to the old position. But it's going to be very, very interesting to see if it does come up the road how this all works out. But again, the same way I felt that when I was talking about Gerrard potentially coming up the road and being excited at that prospect, there is a major stumbling block when it comes to this football club, and it's that sporting director wanting it his way or the highway. So we'll need to wait and see how this pans out. And you know, with that being said, that's us probably reaching the end of today's video, and it's probably the best way I could possibly break down a Kevin Muscat managerial rumour video. Again, there's a lot of highs of his career, there is one glaring low of it, and I've tried to talk about everything in between. I guess the best way to do it is summarise, ladies and gentlemen. You have a manager that has been very successful. You are a manager with a sprinkling of experience in terms of Scottish football, and you've got a manager that manages in a style of play that's been proven to be successful in this league. There's no question marks if this will work. We've seen it work. We've seen the damage it could do. Those are all absolute positives, whilst again a couple negatives are the last time this man went into a powder keg situation in terms of a club in turmoil, where a couple people he needs the answer to, and what happened the last time it was in European football and the way that imploded. That's a warning right there. And also another potential negative is, of course, when he would actually start. If this stuff about him not being able to join this until he does this or till he does that could see us go in without a true manager in charge to the likes of a semi-final versus Celtic. Again, it's all hearsay and rumours. They might come in the door and might be right away, but it is something to at least discuss, as that's the rumour and that's the stuff that's actually out there. So there's pros, there's cons, there's ups, there's downs, there's highs, there's lows. That's another video done and dusted. I would love to know how you feel regarding Kevin Muscat. Do you think he is the right man? For me, again, all the candidates we talked about this summer, including Gerrard, including Danny, Kevin would be my pick in my personal opinion, but it's no up to me, it's up to those that are in charge of this club. And there's one thing I'm sure of, ladies and gentlemen, whatever they decide will be interesting enough to make a video on, and I can only hope if it is any of the people we've discussed or yet someone that's not revealed themselves, we'll talk about it right here on the channel whenever the news needs to be spoken about. But before we wrap up today's video, a wee shout out to the legends that are signed up to the channel Legend memberships. A massive thank you to those that are signed up to the support range, and to each and every single person that takes time out their day that's trying to get us to 70 freaking K. From me to thee, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. No matter who's announced or which way it'll go, we'll discuss it right here on the channel, and it's never ever dull. Until next time, I've been Siege92. Thank you so much for watching. All the best, and bye-bye.